When you're talking about stone carving, the first thing you have to talk about is the stone. This is a white Carrara marble known as statuary marble. This is travertine, and this is peperino. This is a soft limestone, Vicenza limestone. There are various characteristics of stone which make it attractive or unattractive to carving. All of these four stones here are carvable. The problem with travertine, it's carvable, but its weakness is the visual characteristic of the holes in it. Peperino is not what you would call a highly valued stone. It's quite workable. It's a very even hardness throughout, and this is an important characteristic in stone because some stones will have hard parts to them, and that makes them more difficult to work. This soft limestone, like Vicenza stone, the major disadvantage with it is that it doesn't weather terribly well. Marble has several advantages which are quite important. One is, of course, this marble. The pure whiteness of it makes it an ideal stone for certain things like portraits and figures. But another characteristic of marble which is important is its ability to take detail. Basically, these stones are carved in a fairly similar way and using similar tools. The biggest difference is when you get to granite, because granite is so hard that certain tools can't be used on granite. One of the important characteristics, especially of marble, is what I call grain, but it's not the granular characteristic. It's grain like grain in wood. That is, it's a splitting line. And marble, for example, there are marbles which split much too easily and cannot be used for sculpture easily, or delicate sculpture, and they are a characteristic of Carrara marble is that it is very tight grained, but the effect of the grain is that it will break slightly more easily along the grain and more difficult across the grain. Now, if I take as an example here, it would be difficult to carve this in a strongly grained marble because it might too easily break in those areas. An example, for instance, somebody who taught me carving in the United States said that one should be careful about doing anything that's delicate work like a portrait in Vermont marble, because he said what can happen is that you get the portrait almost finished and walk out of your studio and slam the door on Friday evening, and you come in Monday morning and the nose has dropped off. And this is a sort of thing that you really can only tell by the act of carving. That is to say, it's not anything visible in the stone. You don't have any visible signs of grain as you do in travertine. You have to accept that there are two different ways of identifying stone. The way that has become most popular in scholarly circles is chemical and geological analysis. But the way that it was done for centuries, and which still has a certain validity, is the carver's analysis of the stone. That is to say that a stone which splits too easily, you define differently from a stone which does not split easily. You define Verona red as a marble because you carve it like a marble because you can polish it. When you are carving a polishable stone, you try to avoid hitting at a 90-degree angle into the stone, because that puts microfractures, which are bruises, in the stone, and they will show up as white splotches if you put a high level of polish on the stone. So your carving technique is partly affected by the fact of whether or not the stone is polishable. We'll be discussing that when we look at the tools, because the tools are slightly different according to the stone being carved.